It's week 40 of 2021. This is your weekly fix. I'm Smita Nayak. Every 10 years, the exercise of conducting a population census is undertaken in India. It is essentially collecting, compiling, recording, analyzing demographic and socio-economic data of all people in the country. Why does it matter? For one, it forms the basis of our representative democracy. Effective policy making and planning requires accurate enumeration. The census is therefore the bedrock of all kinds of decision making. A just, equitable and effective use of public resources can only be done if we are in possession of countrywide updated granular data. That is what the census provides. Why then does a large part of India's reservation or affirmative action program on caste continue to be implemented without any data? Why did I say a large part? Well, every census in independent India has included a caste-wise enumeration of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, that is Dalits and Adivasis, but no data is published on other castes. So how has OBC reservation been implemented since the 90s? The Mandal Commission report relied on data from the 1931 caste census conducted under British rule. The population of OBCs, the Commission estimated, was to be around 52%. Some say it's an undercount. What about data on upper castes? Professor of Sociology Satish Deshpande posits that as we enter the third decade of the 21st century, the top of Indian society remains overwhelmingly upper caste, while its bottom has stayed almost entirely lower caste. And therein, he concludes, lies the rub. A caste census threatens to push this dimension into the open, making it impossible for the political class to continue to hide behind euphemism and circumvention. Well, the demand for a caste census has come up time and again. Every government at the center has kicked the can down the road. In 2011, though, the Manmohan Singh cabinet decided to conduct a socio-economic caste census. The caste of the household, along with socio-economic status on identified parameters, was collected. This data is yet to be made public. Presently, there is pressure on the Modi government to release this data and for decadal caste enumeration to be undertaken. To help us understand the subject better, we have in the podcast Dr. Rehnamol Ravindran, postdoctoral fellow at Dr. Ambedkar International Center. She taught political science at the Delhi University. Also, Tejas Har, a journalist and political commentator. Tejas has written extensively on caste. Welcome to the podcast and thank you for your time. A little later, senior journalist Sumit Pandey will also join us to talk about the political implications were such an exercise to be undertaken. Dr. Ravindran, in its affidavit in the Supreme Court earlier in September, the Modi government harks back to the decision taken by the Nehru government in preparation of independent India's first census, that of 1951, to say that the then government decided on the official policy of discouragement of caste, implying that counting and enumerating castes would somehow mean encouraging or keeping alive the caste system. Your thoughts on that? And two, it's been argued that in British India from 1872 to 1931, when the census exercise included caste enumeration, there was opposition from some upper castes because they feared the exercise would expose that they were a statistical minority and that this minority had a disproportionately high representation in all spheres that mattered. Do the facts bear this out?
Thank you, Smita, for having me here. I'll go with the first question first. In fact, it was not said by Jawaharlal Nehru, but it was Sardar Patel, who was the Home Minister and also in charge of the census operations. You need to understand the situation in 1951. There was a great euphoria after independence that we would become a casteless society in the next 10 years. This was spoken by both Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel when they were speaking on a resolution to extend political reservation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes for 10 years. Both these leaders believed that after 10 years, there would be equality, brotherhood, bonhomie, and there would be no difference between man to man on the basis of caste. But that was not the case. That was why in 1951 itself, the government was made to bring in an amendment to the constitution, the first amendment, and introduce the word socially and educationally backward classes citizens. This was inserted in Article 15.4 by none other than Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Sardar Patel's idea of India and the euphoria were not true. After 10 years, same Nehru extended political reservation because there was no equality and there was an unabated discrimination. Every state government created backward class commission to focus on the welfare of backward classes. So the very idea of Sardar Patel not to hold a caste census in 1951 does not mean that we will not hold now, because even after 75 years of independence, we still face oppression, discrimination against scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and backward classes continues to be here. So it's very important to hold a caste census now because the oppression, the discrimination, it's still there. And if I'm trying to answer the second question, I would say that firstly, I haven't not heard or read about any group of citizens opposing caste census during colonial period. In fact, if you look at the 1931 census, you'll realize the classification was mostly on the occupation. For example, under the clerks category, you will find Kayasthas and Karanam in Andhra Pradesh. Under the leather worker category, you will find Chamas, Madiga, and maybe Chakliyas. In fact, the 1931 census also classifies Jats into Muslims and Hindu Jats. Similarly, Rajputs into Muslim Rajput and Hindu Rajputs. That was the nature of caste in India at that point of time. Actually, the 1911 census of the untouchables helped the likes of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and M.C. Raja to claim political reservation on the basis of percentage of population. Even the Dravidian movement, after coming to know about the percentage of Brahmins, who were just 3% and occupying 80% of the jobs, only initiated a non Brahmin movement to bring equality. There was no such concept of backward classes till the time it got crystallized in the first amendment to the constitution in 1951 as socially and educationally backward classes citizens. Before that, it was just a non-Brahmin category. If you look at the reservation roster of 1924 of the Madras presidency, it shows the categories where it's a Brahmin category or non-Brahmin category, untouchables or depressed classes, and the Muslims. That's all.
Okay. All right, that clears up things quite a bit. Tejas, a look at contemporary writings on the demand for caste. Do you find no merit at all in what some public intellectuals like Pratap Bhanu Mehta have posited as being the politics of bad faith being projected as a concern for the poor? In a 2010 article, he writes, "It simply falls to say that building a just India requires census data on caste, a list of all things that are necessary to empower the disempowered, political participation, education, resources. Not a single one of these that need to be done to make an impact on people's empowerment requires a caste census."
Yeah, so the thing is, no one measure or one thing, can be like, made to do the task of overhauling society altogether. Like you can't say that, only caste census is going to like transform society so much that it is going to, get rid of all the problems that we face of because of caste. The main census that we have currently, nobody says that this census is, hasn't changed transformed society, so we should stop conducting it. So then why should we like, like ask that job of the caste census? And other claims that Pratap Bhanu Mehta in his articles that how caste census will actually lead to, making the caste problem worse, I don't find any merit in that at all. So this debate comes up again and again, like, and this, this can go back to your previous question about Nehru government as well. At that time also, the policy sort of was to just not talk about caste. And that question came up, at the time of Kaka Kalilkar Commission in 1955. That that commission was for, backward classes, and while defining backward classes, the the commission did not want to, take caste into account. They wanted to define backward classes on some like quote unquote secular criteria, but the actual evidence. When they conducted surveys, etc., they realized that they just can't run away from caste. And even though the chairman of the commission did not like it, they had to include caste as a primary basis of backwardness. And that debate has been raging on since then, that mm, these intellectuals, even policymakers and politicians, the upper caste politicians mainly, they don't want to talk about caste or think of caste as a criteria for making policies, you know etc. But they just can't run away from it, because we encounter it at every level.
Hmm.
And that similar sort of friction we see in people like Pratap Bhanu Mehta, when they talk about caste census. uh, and this is like, you talking about something is not going to make that problem become worse. You actually can't solve a problem if you don't talk about it, if you don't like deal with it.
Right.
And similar is the thing with caste. If the reason we want to have caste census is so that we will know how exactly the resources have been distributed in society, and that can help us make better policies. And census does not have the kind of power that Mehta attributes to it. We already are a caste society. We can't deny that. There is discrimination, there is the unequal distribution of resources, opportunities, etc. That fact already exists, and I don't think census is going to make that worse. Census actually can help social movements, activists, even researchers, to intervene properly, like, because then the problem will become like much more clearer.
Correct. Dr. Ravindran, Mr. Mehta further writes, this demand of caste census has rather been fueled by politically assertive groups like OBCs, who first hijacked the Dalit discourse on deprivation to their own ends. Mr. Mehta isn't the only one to have made this point, that the interests of OBCs are pitted against that of Dalits. One political theorist, writing not in the context of the census but on that of the BJP, RSS, and OBC support, said that since Mandal, OBCs have enjoyed higher levels of intergenerational mobility and land ownership in comparison to Dalits. He quotes an IMF report. He writes that many OBC communities have been involved in physical conflicts with Dalits and Muslims, and that many of them have been willing foot soldiers of this project to build a Hindu Rashtra. Tamil Nadu, where OBCs led the emancipation anti Brahmin movement, he writes, is an exception.
Yeah, I would say that this is very shallow indicator of trying to oppose census by pitting Dalits against OBCs. Okay, we agree to the fact that there is a conflict between backward caste and Dalits in the rural areas, especially. But how would that matter in creating a caste census?
Right.
And there is, of course, the difference between the land holding backward caste and landless Dalits. So there would be a socio-economic differentiation and social hierarchical differentiation. There will be discriminatory factors between Dalits and backward caste. But how does all this argument fit to say that we should not have a caste census? This argument is like pitting non-Jatav Dalits against Jatav Dalits in UP, for example. I think that's my opinion here.
Tejas?
I agree with that completely. So this happens a lot in lot of other contexts as well. Like when people talk about reservations, for example, and as Dr. Ravindran said, this does not really have any connection with the caste census, but this is still brought up. And when people say you know OBCs who have cornered political positions, etc., etc., they are mainly talking about peasant castes. We have to see that OBC, all the castes do not have same occupations. They do not probably have same level of socio-economic conditions. Like the number of OBCs in the country is about 5,000 if you look at all the state lists, right? And out of this 5,000, less than, I don't know, 500 would be peasant castes. The castes that get the majority of the attention of intellectuals like Pratap Bhanu Mehta. and they are sort of made representative of the OBCs, and the whole category is tarnished. And even these peasant castes, you have to see that in the reservation scheme, most of the states have subcategories.
Hmm.
So you will have like in Maharashtra we have separate reservations for what is called as OBCs, and then nomadic tribes, and then special backward classes. So these kind of divisions you will see in Bihar also, Andhra Pradesh also, in a lot of other states. So you can't say that only few castes are cornering all the reservation benefits. That is one. Even in politics, a lot of the other agricultural castes that are not part of the OBC group, for example Marathas, they dominate the political scene. And even here you have to see the population of these castes. Like Marathas are the largest caste in Maharashtra, and Yadavs, who are OBCs, they have a large population in the north. uh, but that factor is not taken into account. uh, while Brahmins, for example, their population is so less everywhere, but what is their representation of in political space, that nobody speaks about. So we have to keep these things in mind. And going back to caste census, like what relation does this have with the caste census? It's not so. Actually, caste census will give us clarity, like what is the population of all these castes, what kind of social and economic background these castes have. And after that, if you feel that okay, one a certain caste does not merit to be in the OBC category, that caste can be removed from the list, because that provision we have in the law, that the government always has the power to either add a caste to the list or remove it from the list.
Hmm. But that would also be a politically fraught exercise, wouldn't it be? Dr. Ravindran, just staying with this assertion that has been made in many quarters, that while the cohort of OBCs have the same or similar caste location, there is wide variance in levels of political, social, and economic backwardness. OBCs at the upper end enjoy both political power and control over land, and if any measure is undertaken to increase overall OBC representation, it will only end up further strengthening these particular communities at the cost of other OBCs.
Um, I think we presume a lot of things even before the caste census is happening. I think like we should at least let the caste census happen, and the rest of the things will take place post caste census. I think that's what we have to now look at. When the caste census comes out, we do not know what kind of data would be coming out.
Hmm.
I think there are a lot of presumptions even before conducting this caste census. What my opinion is that let the caste census happen and let the data be out. I think after that the government of the day can take rational decisions on the basis of that. So
Okay.
that would be my, yeah.
Tejas, the Justice Rohini Commission set up to look at the subcategorization of OBCs was meant to address some of these issues. It's been getting multiple extensions, and one doesn't quite know when the report will come. Reportedly, an assessment of the implementation of the 27% OBC quota over the last 5 years has shown that benefits have been cornered by certain castes, and it's not equitable, basically.
So the thing is, this subcategorization already exists in many states, as I said earlier, and therefore, like OBC groups are used to it, and therefore most of them are not opposing Rohini Commission. People actually are waiting for Rohini Commission, and I assume that most OBC groups will welcome this subcategorization, and then all these doubts and criticism that only few castes are getting benefit of reservation, that can be dispelled. Then you can put like some castes in one category, and the others that you feel that are left out, they can have their own separate category, right?
Right.
So that like all the castes can take benefit of reservation. So and actually caste census will again help here. Like Rohini Commission had to do their own surveys and research, etc. And I feel that it's not that foolproof. But if you have caste census, which is such a huge exercise, and the data that we get out of a census is so granular that it can actually help us make these categories better.
Tejas, how do you view the BJP's non committal position on the demand for releasing SECC data and conducting a proper caste census?
There is a consistency in opposing caste census right from the beginning, right? Like, we did not have a caste census in 1951 as well. We could have, because 1931 we had, then 41 was a war year, so there were like a lot of other things that were going on, so we did not. But in 1951 government could have reintroduced caste census, but it did not, and that policy continued since then. I remember, sorry, I have read that around 2001 census also there was lot of noise
Right.
about conducting caste census. Government did not agree. Again in 2011, a lot of Bahujan leaders were demanding it, and the UPA government did not budge. But then, as a compromise, they had a separate census called socio-economic caste census, which was not part of the main census.
Hmm.
And so BJP opposing it is a continuation of that sort of elite opposition to caste census. And you talk about non so-called non-dominant OBCs being wooed by BJP. uh, Now the caste census will not be only OBC census. It will be like it will also throw a light on upper caste. What is their population, what kind of resources they have, what is their financial background, educational background, and that data people don't actually want to see, because they fear that that data will show the kind of inequality we have in society right now.
Right.
That is one. And second, when you don't have data, like for example Yadavs and non-Yadavs in the OBC category, for example, when you don't have the exact data about that, BJP can manipulate, those the narratives better. Like when there is like sort of what is the right word? Like, you don't actually know what exactly is the reality, then you can manufacture reality,
Right.
and that is what BJP tries to do, while creating sort of vote banks, right? But if you have data, then then you have to deal with the data itself, and then you cannot create false narratives. So that actually, if the caste census happens, that actually will take away some power from BJP to manufacture narratives.
Okay. Dr. Ravindran, will the caste census at all be able to guide the decisions to be made for which there is great pressure on state governments to include or not in the reservation ambit a community like the Marathas in Maharashtra who have enjoyed consistent political power, land ownership, etc., and as some people say, making their claims contestable, or indeed the politically powerful caste bloc of Patels in Gujarat?
Um, so, um, so those who want to uh, link Maratha reservation or the reservation demand for the Patels of Gujarat seem to take the caste census a bit too far-fetched. The issue of Marathas or Patels or even Kapus of Andhra Pradesh existed even before the current demand for caste census. It is also a bit too far-fetched to think that when the caste census tells us that the actual population of the backward classes in this country is somewhere around 60 to 70%, then overall clamor for reservation as per population would grow.
Hmm.
So we should understand that in the Indra Sawhney case, even though the other backward class measured about 52% of the population, as per the Mandal Commission report, they secured only 27% reservation under the 50% rule of the Supreme Court judgment. So the other backward classes in this country kept quiet. There was not much of clamor to breach the 50% rule. But once the government in 2019 breached the 50% rule, and till now, when the Supreme Court has not given any decision on that breach in the EWS reservation for the non-SC ST OBCs in the country, then naturally it was a fear of the upper caste that if a caste census project is 60 to 70% of population of backward caste in this country, the backward caste would claim such reservation, right? It will be up to the government of the day to decide. It would also up to the Supreme Court of the Constitutional courts to decide upon that. Even though the Indira Sani judgment, while granting constitutional rights to reservation for the backward class of citizen in this country, it has taken away many things from them. It took away reservation promotions, imposed creamy layer. It pushed in the 50% rule. At the end of it, it restricted their reservation of OBCs from 52% to 27%.
Right.
So these fears that Patels and Marathas and other powerful castes coming in to grab reservation doesn't gel with the caste society. Who who knows, contrary to the belief that Marathas and Patels are rich, what if we find 70% of them are poor? This finding would anyway be in the unreleased SCCC data. This is another idea to create a breach between upwardly mobile backwards and the others. That would be my answer.
Tejas?
Yeah, I mean, so caste census will actually help clarify a lot of things. For example, in the case of Marathas in Maharashtra, the population is right now, is said to be around like 30 to 35%. And based on that, government had proposed, about 15% reservation to them. But now we don't actually know what their population is. Like what we have are only estimates. So if you have caste census, then we will know their exact population. And as Dr. Ravindran said, we also will know like what is the economic condition of Marathas, like how many of them are poor, how many graduates do Marathas have, and things like that. And that data can help us, understand their, like the socio-economic, mostly educational and economic condition of Marathas. And because when the commission recommended that Marathas should get reservation, the commission had done its own sample surveys. Now, like sample surveys are not perfect because as opposed to a census, because in census you go to each household and find data on each house or the person. So the data that we get is much more comprehensive and much more granular, right?
Right.
So if we have that data, then like the demand by Marathas and Patels and Jats in the north, all of these demands can be dealt with that data. So
But the principle of reservations, as envisaged in our constitution, is meant as reparations for historical injustices. Therefore, social backwardness rooted in caste oppression is essential to be considered for reservation. Where do the demands for reservations for Marathas, etc., fit into this?
so I actually am somewhere, in the middle because these castes, they are not exactly upper caste. They are agricultural castes, and they also have faced social discrimination and so some sort of disabilities, but they also are not like castes that are even below in the caste hierarchy. So I am actually neutral on this question. I mean, I you can't exactly call them lower caste also, but you can't also call them upper caste. So that's something that we have to grapple with, and I don't have an answer to that, and therefore we'll have to like deal with that question politically. I do not think there can be an objective answer to this, because if you look at these castes historically, some of them even had tribal origins. For example, Jats, and like castes like Marathas, which probably wasn't even a caste 3 centuries ago. It was an agricultural caste which also faced discrimination by Brahmins, and they were kept away from education and all of those things. So it's a little tricky question.
Dr. Ravindran, in its affidavit in the Supreme Court, the Modi government submitted that the data collected as part of the socio-economic caste census in 2011 was unusable. I'm quoting from that affidavit. The SCCC data pertaining to castes in Maharashtra shows 4.28 lakh castes enumerated, As opposed to this, the existing castes which are published in the state in SC, ST, and OBC category are only 494. And 99% of castes enumerated have a population of less than 100 persons. All this, the government claimed, pointed to SECC being fraught with mistakes and inaccuracies.
Okay. I think the best solution to this multiplicity of castes in the socioeconomic caste census is to upload the data into the public domain. That's very simple solution and hand over to the Anthropological Survey of India to collate those castes into categories. It's a very easy exercise to do. It will not take much time. In fact, the data of SACC was available with the government in 2014. I'll tell you a very simple thing as to how a caste enumeration is done beautifully. Example was in Punjab in 1931. All the Dalits started returning their caste as Adi Dharmi in Andhra. They call as Adi Andhra, Adi Dravida in Tamil Nadu. So the census guys of 1931 simply came back and added them up. But the point is, today, over a period of 75 years or more, people have started realizing that somebody asked them their caste, they started mentioning their Gotra as their caste. If somebody was a Brahmin, they would mention Pandit, Chaturvedi, Sharma, or Kaushik. Let's leave to the Anthropological Survey of India who tell us, okay, all this Trivedi or Divedi or Chaturvedi and whatever the surnames, Kaushik, all these things fall category of Brahmins. It's very easy.
Right.
Why is somebody afraid mentioning that instead of 419 for castes in Maharashtra, some 48,000 castes cropped up? Why is that SCCC thing shown as monstrosity? Please upload SCCC data into public domain and just wait. Even 10 social research institution will crystallize the data for you. Believe in our academician, in our research institution, in our social research institution especially, we will decipher SCCC data for the nation. I don't think it will take 6 months even to tell you what or all those SCC castes are.
Right. That certainly clears up that issue. Thank you for your time and your insights. Dr. Ravindran Tejas Harad, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Smita. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Smita.
Thank you. Thanks. Let's also bring in senior journalist Sumit Pandey to help us understand the political ramifications were such a census to be conducted. Sumit, thanks for joining us. Why, in your opinion, I'll begin by asking you, has the BJP, which has been a beneficiary of non-dominant OBC votes, a community that played a key role in its electoral triumphs, not keen on releasing the SECC data or indeed conducting a proper caste census? Is it a fear of pushback from upper castes?
Smita, not only BJP, any political party in power, before taking a policy decision like this, which may have ramifications and a disruption uh, in the current status quo that is prevailing in the country, is going to scan it and think over it multiple of times before committing on anything like this.
Right.
So, even in 2011, when Congress agreed to conduct an SECC, I'm sure that it would have gone through the pros and cons. But I think within the political system at that point in time, especially within the Congress, there would have been a decision taken that probably it's sort of Pandora's box, which we do not know how it's going to, what how it's going to affect the current polity, and whether it's going to be beneficial to the Congress's politics or not. And then this data was not released. Obviously, the argument given later was that the data is contaminated. Currently also, BJP has been able to do a fine balancing act, in the sense that they have been able to balance the OBC aspirations, and at the same point in time they've been able to carry together the upper caste voters. So if they reach out to the backwards, they also have been able to implement, economically weaker section quotas of 10% to mollify its core constituency. A decision like this can have huge ramifications, Smita. First of all, one must understand that in going ahead with this quota and decision, and if you have the empirical numbers, then there could obviously be demand from various smaller caste groups or intermediary caste groups, who may use the data to ask the government to redefine the OBC reservations. For example, the Patels have been demanding, Marathas have been demanding, the Kapus have been demanding in Andhra Pradesh. That's going to, I mean, this data may raise further questions on how the quota pie of, especially amongst the OBCs, is to be divided. Whether that suits the BJP or not, I'm basically giving you a political argument, from a political perspective.
Right.
Then there is the question of quota within quota.
Hmm.
That again is a very important aspect. The certain castes have walked away with the privileges or the advantages of the reservations vis-a-vis the smaller castes, especially in Uttar Pradesh. There was this Hukum Singh committee report which was published when Rajnath Singh was the chief minister in 2002, and it says that a majority of, I mean, the Yadavs and the Kurmis, the two castes, have been the major beneficiary amongst the OBCs, whereas the smaller castes like the Mauryas and the Kushwaha have not gone anything. So within the OBC section, whether it's going to again create a new churning, and how that churning is going to affect the BJP politics, is these are the questions which are undetermined currently at this point in time.
Sumit, Sanjay Kumar from CSDS has written that the reason why the BJP seems reluctant about a caste census may be for fear that it might give a new issue to regional parties to mount pressure on them for reshaping the OBC quota in central government jobs and educational institutions. It might result in a situation of Mandal 2, he wrote, giving a new lease of life to many regional parties which otherwise are struggling to find an agenda to challenge the BJP electorally.
Smita, I would not call it Mandal 2, I would call it Mandal 3. Mandal 1 happened in 1989 and 90.
Right.
Mandal 2 happened when BJP was able to disrupt this narrative and create an OBC constituency for itself, in the process isolating the Jatavs among the Dalits and the Yadavs amongst the backwards, and becoming the repository of this, this larger vote bank. Mandal 3 will happen because can happen because if you have an empirical data to show. Now again, I'll just go back, and from where this entire sentiment for conducting a caste census also comes from is the fact that EWS quota was implemented by the current government just ahead of the 2019 elections. Now, one of the primary arguments which is often giving cited in not increasing the OBC quota, though some states have done it, like Tamil Nadu, which they have done it by putting it in the ninth schedule, is that it breaches the 27% or the 49-50% ceiling, which has been set up by the Supreme Court in the Indira Sahni case. Now that reservation was that threshold was breached in the EWS quota. So the argument which has emanated from there is that if the 50% threshold can be breached to include the EWS quota, why not increase the OBC quota if the empirical data finds that the numerical strength of the OBCs is much more than what has been calculated probably in the Mandal Commission report, and if we have the data to show that what is their current socio-economic status. But again, as I said, because in the political arena, the space which has been occupied by the Mandal parties has been encroached upon, and they're trying to push that back.
Hmm.
We see the ramification of it in the form of a very strong demands among these parties for getting some sort of the empirical data as far as the reservation, and also for a targeted implementation of various government schemes.
Okay. Sumit, thank you for your time and thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Smita.
That's it on this episode of your weekly fix. I'll be back next Friday.